Welcome to the MIT-ID Innovation Program podcast. This is a repository of insights by thought leaders and practitioners of innovation where they speak about their views, insights, and experiences. Come join us.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Essentials for Billions. How did BigBasket innovate? My name is Priya Dhawan and I contribute as the Head of Collaborations, Branding and Outreach to the MIT-ID Innovation Program. This is our 8th webinar since lockdown started, and I'm grateful to be amongst you all hosting this informational session today. I'm pleased to introduce our guest speaker and innovator, Mr. Hari.T.N, Head of HR, BigBasket. An IIT and IIM alumni, he started his career with Tata Steel in procurement, corporate planning, later moving to HR to help restructure the company. Of his 3+ decades of work, he spent 14+ years at Tata Steel and 18+ years with high growth startups, playing a key role in shaping their growth and successful exits. Namely, Daksh was acquired by IBM. They listed Virtusa on NASDAQ. Amba Research was acquired by Moody's and Taxi for Sure by Ola. Hari is also a mentor at accelerators like Techstars, Silicon Road, and Yuma. An advisor to an early stage VC fund as well as a late stage VC fund set up by Nandan Nilekani and Sanjeev Agarwal. Hari was also one of the LinkedIn top voices in India for 3 years straight, 2016, 2017, and 2018. He has co-authored 4 books, 3 were published. There's the 4th one slated for publication in August 2020. The names are Cut the Crap and Jargon, Lessons from the Startup Trenches, Cutting the Gordian Knot, India's Quest for Prosperity. 3rd one was Saying No to Jugaad, The Making of BigBasket. And the last one, which is yet to come, which is From Pony to a Sustainable Unicorn. Before we proceed to listen to Hari, I have a few updates to share about the session and the MIT-ID Innovation Program webinar platform. Thank you all for patiently waiting for today's webinar to start. We will have the guest speaker share his insights for the first half hour, followed by questions in the latter half hour. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's webinar. If you have a question for our speaker, please feel free to share it once you set your chat mode to everyone and of course through the Q&A slot. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will surely follow it up with answers offline. This webinar will be available after the session on our various social channels, and future webinars will be accessible via the links that you'll be mailed to from time to time. We'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar and its learnings with your social networks. This curated series on innovations, it'll feature a variety of industry thought leaders, speakers like Mr. Hari.T.N, who are a part of the MIT-ID innovation ecosystem. For those who are joining us for the first time today, I'd like to inform you that MIT stands for the 4-decade-old Maharashtra Institute of Technology. ID stands for MIT's 15-year-old Pioneering Institute of Design. And the 1-year innovation program is the latest offering of MIT-ID, which aims to create a new breed of comprehensive innovators. All informed by design thinking, influenced by future technologies and trends, and inspired to make their own mark in the global political, social, economic, and technological scenario. Hari, we warmly welcome you. We're all waiting to know how BigBasket managed a 900% spike in orders with only half the staff during India's lockdown. Over to you.
Great. First of all, thank you, Priya, for organizing this, and thank you all the participants for joining. I hope it's worth your time. So what I'll do is maybe you are talking, the topic is about innovation in times of crisis and with specific focus on what BigBasket has been doing. Right. So what I will do maybe is that I will step back a little and talk about crisis and innovation in general a little bit. And then I'll move to specific aspects of what BigBasket has been doing. So I mean, these are truly extraordinary times. You know, I never imagined in my lifetime I would see something like this, where I would be locked down at home for so many days. And some of the calls that we are having, I can't even believe the kind of things that we are discussing. So this is truly, you know, once in a lifetime kind of event most of us are likely to experience. I mean, one could say that we went through 2 other black swan events in this century, 9/11 and the big credit crisis of 2008. I think the economy collapsed at that point of time worldwide. But this, I think, is truly unprecedented. It is something that has not been really understood. There are differing opinions on the implications, both short-term as well as long-term. And therefore, I think this makes it all the more uncertain. So, a crisis is something that can strike anywhere, anytime. It's only once in a while that there are some early warning signals, and the writing on the wall is perceptible to a discerning eye in some of those situations. And with some foresight, I think you can even plan for such an eventuality. But on most of occasions, it's a bolt from the blue. This certainly was a big bolt from the blue. And a crisis can come in different forms. A crisis can impact your business. It can impact your brand. It can impact an industry. It can impact a whole range of industries. It can engulf the complete globe. And it can be very, very small as well. It could be very personal too. So I think a personal crisis is as important for an individual as any other crisis. So I think a crisis can come in various forms and shapes. I would also say that, in any crisis, there is a hidden opportunity for innovation. And in any innovation comes a hidden crisis. So I think the both of them go hand in hand. They're two sides of the same coin. So I will just tell you a few stories, some of them from my own experience, and I will take some stories from history. So I'll just talk to you about a story that I experienced at Taxi. This was exactly like Ola. Sometime in 2013, 14, there was a bitter battle for market share between these two startups. They were actually doing the same thing that Uber was doing in the US, which is using technology to provide a cab on demand. I think this was extremely powerful. The model was very, very effective. And many of the investors, who were backing these companies believed that there is a huge first mover advantage and there is potential to actually grow your market share so rapidly and build such a strong entry barrier that Uber would find it difficult to actually take a foothold in India. And both these startups, Ola as well as Taxi for Sure, were backed by pretty strong investors. And both of them were looking at raising a large round of funding because both of them were obviously burning cash. So Ola did that sometime in October 2014. It raised a $210 million round from SoftBank. And that was a big, move on the part of Ola. I think it was a big success, placed them on a position of strength. Taxi for Sure was also on the road for raising a similar amount. So Raghu, the last week of November, was in the US actually to close the next round of financing. And suddenly something happened which was totally unexpected. Sometime in the first week of December in Delhi, there was an Uber driver who raped a female passenger. And this changed the whole thing completely. It was a bolt from the blue. It was a black swan event. The way the public, there was a huge public outcry against this incident. And both these companies were already providing a service which was being questioned in terms of its legitimacy by several government authorities. So this was really the last straw in the camel's back kind of thing. And instead of drawing attention to the difficult law and order situation in the country or poor law and order situation in the country, the focus was on taxi aggregators. Are they safe enough? There was no realization that the safety has got nothing to do with taxi aggregation business, but the safety was about inadequate safety for women on roads in general and in urban India in particular. I think after that, all the investors said, we need to wait and watch. We don't know what are the long-term implications. So that really was the case. And Taxi for Sure was running out of money. And very quickly, there was no more money to run the company. And Ola had to acquire it. And Ola acquired it because Uber was also waiting in the wings to potentially act as a white knight. So the lesson in this is that whatever you may do, there will be some kinds of crisis which will hit you in such a way that you cannot recover. You can do nothing about it. So there is got to be some degree of acceptance that some crisis can actually bring you down. And that's what they did for a company like Taxi for Sure. But the silver lining in the cloud is that you can always rise from the ashes. If you are a strong enough individual, if you're a strong enough entrepreneur, you can make a new beginning. You can do something very different. And that's what eventually the founders of Taxi for Sure ended up doing. They became fresh entrepreneurs. They became angel investors. They are backing very successful companies. So in some ways, irrespective of whether the crisis brings you down or not, if you are resilient, you can always rise from the ashes. I'll talk to you about a separate case, which shows that a crisis is also an opportunity for innovation. So I don't know how many of you are interested in history, but if you are, you would know that sometime in 1453, which is in the middle of the 15th century exactly, the Byzantine Empire was brought down by the Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Turks actually took Constantinople, which was the capital of the Byzantine Empire under Sultan Mehmud II. And that was the downfall of the Roman Empire in all. 1500 years of Roman rule ended on that day in May 1453. And the Ottoman Empire expanded after that. Constantinople was at the crossroads of Asia and Europe. The Ottomans stopped the trade completely. The Silk Route was completely blocked. All the trade that was happening between Europe and Asia came to a standstill. That triggered a desperate search for alternate routes to Asia and India in particular. You had Vasco da Gama and the Portuguese coming to India from the tip of Africa. With great difficulty, the fleet of Vasco da Gama, after almost going to South America, because that's how the winds took them. When the winds changed, they changed, direction and actually found India via the Arabian Sea. Columbus discovered the entire new world, North America, South America, a world that no one knew existed. Magellan sailed around the globe. So it was an opportunity for human enterprise to be able to discover a world that we never knew. So I think in many ways, Ottoman Turks stopping the trade, the land routes between Europe and Asia was such a powerful trigger for innovation, adventure, and discovery that a whole new world was discovered, new means of transportation was discovered, and all new trade routes opened up. So much so that, we in India can't live without chilies and potatoes. All of these have come from South America. And most of us tend to believe that these existed with us always. And the other side is also true. Every innovation in many ways creates a crisis. Industrialization created a crisis of its own. Automation, for example, power looms displaced those who were hand weavers. So somebody's innovation is someone else's crisis. So for example, today we are seeing that there are innovation opportunities, but there's also a crisis, for the people who are the blue collar workforce, whose livelihoods have all been destroyed. A lot of people have been used to doing manual work, and social distancing has been coming in the way. So a lot of innovation also brings with it some degree of crisis. So I think that's very critical to understand. So we talked of the fact that there will be black swan that will bring you down. You need to be resilient. You can rise from the ashes. We talked to the fact that innovation can always create a crisis, and a crisis also provides an opportunity for innovation. So see the current crisis also as a potential opportunity for innovation. There will be personal crisis as well, and you need to emerge resilient from that. All of us have seen some of our people that we know well have gone through personal tragedies, and some of them have emerged very strong at the end of it. So I think that's another big lesson, which is that all of us go through some crisis, and then it will, help us emerge strong if we wish to. There can be other types of crises. I'll just give you one example before I come to BigBasket. One example, I don't know how many of you remember that sometime in 2015, by 2015 actually, Nestle's Maggi brand of noodles was extremely popular in India. It was considered a very tasty food for the simple reason that they had customized it to the Indian palate, and it was supremely easy to prepare. So it was extremely popular among children, parents, housewives, everybody. And sometime in 2015, the nation was shocked to hear that Maggi has certain content of lead, which is unacceptable. So, and therefore Maggi went through a ban. Over a period of time, both the houses of parliament said, Maggi needs to be banned. So from being a very loved brand, it got to being banned. In 2006, Coca-Cola went through a similar crisis, which is, based on the Center for Science and Environment's report that Coke contains pesticides. Coke was banned. So the irony in this is that while Indians love some of these MNC products, there is also deep underlying psyche of a nation that was under foreign rule. As a result of which, from time to time, we are very sensitive to how foreign companies and MNCs behave towards Indian consumers. Are they taking us for a ride? Do they care less about us than for Western societies as far as their products are concerned? Is lingering doubt, which comes to the fore when something like this happens. And Maggie responded in a very poor way. That is one of the examples of how a company should not respond to a crisis. It actually began taking on the regulatory authorities and began questioning their findings instead of trying to work very collaboratively with them. I think that escalated things far, far more than it should have happened. And many countries in the West also began questioning whether some of the Nestle products are safe or not, and they began doing some of their own tests. In this period, many rival brands quickly occupied the space that Nestle had taken. And I think the lesson in this is that you should know how to handle a crisis well. Crisis is not in your control. Lead being found, which is higher in content as estimated by somebody, is not in your control. But how you deal with it, how honest you are, how authentic you are, how collaborative you are in dealing with something like this is very, very critical. So I'll just pause here in terms of talking about crisis in general and the fact that it can strike you anytime. There can be different types of crisis. It could be an individual crisis. It could be a key employee or leaving your company, departure, which could mean that your company is at risk. It could be a brand like Nestle or a Coke being damaged by some specific findings. It could be about a whole industry coming off, or it could be a crisis like this, which is affecting the whole world. I'll now go to the specifics about BigBasket. So when something like this happened, there was, the world did not know how to respond. I think we were all watching how China was reacting. Then we noticed what was happening in Iran. We noticed what was happening in Italy. We were all wondering how serious this is. Is this really a serious problem? Or is this one of those clues that people are worried about unnecessarily? Will it go away? Will India ever be impacted by this or not? But very soon we realized that the whole world is affected. Nobody is immune to this. And then very soon we were under lockdown. 22nd March, I still remember the date. That was the day when Janata curfew was held. 25th March was when the lockdown formally started. And India has taken lockdown very seriously, as a result of which all of us are staying home. And, for me, it's very easy to sit in this position and say that, this is an opportunity. In some ways, I feel guilty doing this because it has impacted hundreds of millions of people so badly that for me to say that it was an opportunity for BigBasket to innovate almost sounds, incorrect to do so. Almost sounds to me a little unethical. But anyway, that's the story in terms of how we innovated despite this. So obviously, online grocery became the rage because people couldn't step out. Social distancing was important. You couldn't go out and buy groceries. So everyone began ordering online. Everyone who was skeptical of online grocery in the past, online fruits and vegetables in the past, began ordering on BigBasket. And we did not have the workforce who will come and deliver or pick those products for the simple reason that they were as concerned about their safety as all of us who are on this webinar are. So they didn't want to come out too. And many of them wanted to stay home. A few of them did turn up for work. But the tragedy is that India is a poor country and livelihoods very quickly get impacted. So the trade-off often is between a livelihood versus, health and hygiene. And I don't know, I wish that this was not a trade-off that we necessarily had to do or people in India had to necessarily do, but that's the reality of today. So we did find that even though some employees, many of them stopped coming up for work, we had several other associations, who were in trouble reach out to us. So we had the Restaurateurs Association of India, Retail Association of India. We had, the cab companies like Ola reach out, Zoomcar reach out to us. And we had several other associations reach out to us. And we tried many of them actually. At one point of time in the beginning, we were working with almost 60 partners. We were evaluating the possibility of using their services, their workforce, which was idle, which was not having much work to do. And then we found that some opportunities are working out, whereas tie-ups with some other players were not really working out. So wherever it was possible, we went ahead and used their workforce. And some places we realized that it was not scaling because there was a lot of enthusiasm. For example, the National Restaurateurs Association of India said that there were some 3,000 or 4,000 people to be deployed. And then when we reached out to a large number of them, we realized that none of them were really interested in the kind of work that we had, which is picking at warehouses and delivering, crates to doorsteps of customers. That's what they were not interested in doing. Some partnerships, progressed, whereas some partnerships fizzled out. And we also had to do things like, how do we get more from less? Which is, if you have 25% of the workforce turn up, how can you then, get them to do what maybe 70% of the workforce would have in the past done? And therefore, we had to innovate. So what we said was that we will cut down the assortment. And we have the warehouse, just to give you a sense, a typical picker in the warehouse walks about 10 kilometers every day to pick your products for a customer. And then we realized that the assortment size, which was about 20,000 in the warehouse, we don't need that in case of a lockdown. Customers do not want exotic stuff. They don't want gourmet stuff. They just want the basic essentials. So we identified about 2,000 to 2,500 basic essentials and moved them to a small part of the warehouse. So, pickers didn't have to walk that 10 kilometers because all these 2,000 SKUs were juxtaposed. So they just had to walk about 2 kilometers a day at best, and they could very easily pick this up. We also innovated in the form of reaching out to apartment complexes and asking them if we could do them bulk deliveries. Can volunteers in those apartment complexes actually segregate the orders of individual customers and distribute the orders of individual customers? We even said that we can do that for you, but as long as you order in aggregate. So if 30, 40 customers in an apartment complex place orders with us, can we then pick all those 30, 40 customer orders in bulk? And that improves efficiencies significantly as well. We also decided that we will move products from our warehouses, which are distribution centers, into our dark stores in lots, which means that, let's say, a Kindle water bottle comes to you in a pack of 10. Then a store can't order 37 Kindle bottles. They have to order only in multiples of 10. So to be 10, 20, 30, 40. So we simplified. So you had to order in bulk. A dark store would order in bulk, as a result of which the picking in the warehouse was in bulk, movement was in bulk, storage was in bulk. So we never ordered loose stuff. So that improved efficiencies for us. We also said that, we will move to a system where customers can be delivered their orders 6 days from now or even 7 days from now. Earlier, the rate at which customers used to place orders with us, all of them were delivered on the same day or the next day. We didn't have to go beyond the next day. And the way this works is that it's a very beautiful system. And a lot of the innovation, I must tell you, is very simple innovation. And I'll talk to you about what innovation is in a moment from now. So what we did was that we, so we, first of all, we restricted the number of, SKUs to 2,000. We began moving items in bulk, and we moved to a 7-day window. In the 7-day, earlier what we used to do was that if you ordered something, that item was reserved for you. For example, if you ordered a packet of Britannia biscuits, that packet of Britannia biscuits was earmarked for you. So if there were 10 packets, and if you ordered all 10, for instance, just for argument's sake, then the next customer who comes in will not find any Britannia packets, even though they were physically in store, even though they were not picked or delivered, they were not shown as available. So the next customer would not see it. So you, as a customer who had ordered these 10 packets of Britannia, was guaranteed to get it because it was reserved for you physically in all possible ways, and no other customer could order it for you. Now we changed that. What we said was that even if you ordered those 10 packets of Britannia biscuits, we did not reserve it for you. Some other customer could come in and see the packets of Britannia, especially if that customer order would be delivered 5 days from now or 4 days from now. Because we were sure, or reasonably sure, that in these 3 or 4 days, Britannia as a company would replenish those packets of biscuits. And therefore, we will be able to get them by the time the next customer needs it. In the process, our fill rate went for a toss. In the past, we used to deliver about 99.5% of the fill rate, which means that if a customer ordered 100 items, 99.5 were delivered, which means that if thousands across, you take this data across millions of customers, the fill rate was 99.5%. Now, by changing this, the fill rate dropped to 90%. We got it back to 93, 94%. But the point was that customers could place orders and did not see things as out of stock. So that was the need of the hour. We realized that that's the innovation that was needed. So we brought that change as well. The other thing I told you about was we began getting customers to order in bulk as well. So I think these were some very simple innovations. We also did some product level innovations where we said that millions of new customers who had never shopped with us are coming, and millions of other customers who had shopped with us are not finding slots. So we changed and tweaked the algorithms based on which our existing customers were given priority. Our gold and platinum customers were given priority in terms of slots. Were given very, very high priority. Where we booked or reserved very large number of slots for them. So that was also something that we did. And there are a lot of other small innovations which are not really worth talking about, continuous innovation. And the point I'd like to make about innovation overall is that most of us seem to believe that, a Polaroid camera or an iPhone or a jet engine, these are all amazing innovations. Absolutely, they are amazing. They are world-changing innovations. But most innovation in the world is really very, very small things. They are about making very small changes and executing them well. In his book, Loom Shots, I think Sefi Becker has explained this beautifully. And I really love the way he's explained it. I think I'll just take a minute to explain this concept because it's so powerful. He says there are two concepts, and I'll talk about both. He says that there are two types of innovations, the S type and the P type. The P type, he says, are the product innovations. A jet engine is a P type innovation. A Polaroid camera is a P type of innovation. But you don't see these P type innovations happening every day. But there are S type innovations, which is where you get your process, training, hiring, everything and technology interwoven in such a way that it works seamlessly without a flaw every time. It delivers a consistent service or a product or a customer experience every time, millions of times. So that's S-type innovation. A lot of innovation that BigBasket does, or even a company like Amazon, a lot of their innovation too, I would say is the S-type innovation, which is for an outsider, it would almost look like, what is innovative about this? What is innovative about a customer experience executive or a delivery boy being able to deliver an order every day in the same manner and delivering the same customer experience, which is that small things like a cutter should be available in the pouch that a delivery boy takes out of the delivery. The cutter has to be used to cut out the strings which are used to wrap the crate covers. The invoice should be full. The delivery boy must know that what are the items, segregate the items on the floor and tick them off and get the customers to say, yes, my order has been delivered. How do you get a small thing like this consistently correct every day, especially on scale? You need technology, you need training, you need process, you need people. And there's a huge churn in people. Millions, hundreds, thousands of people are joining, leaving. How do you ensure that new people are also delivering the same customer experience every time? So I think that's the S type of innovation. So S type of innovation is a small innovation, which for an outsider does not even appear as innovation. But no outsider can deliver that experience because they don't know how to bring these different pieces of the puzzle together every day. The other aspect of innovation he talks about is a beautiful one if you understand this, which is he says that there are two components for innovation. The first component is that in any organization, you need to separate daily operations, which is business as usual, from the thinking part. The two have different rhythms. The two call for different skills and talents. The same people cannot be doing both. Those who are thinking out of the box, those who are thinking ahead, those who are thinking for the future should be different from those who are executing operations day in and day out, which is BAU. That's parameter one, which is separate the two. The second parameter which he talks about is interaction between these two, which is those who are thinking into the future and thinking of new ideas, and those who are executing stuff every day. The interaction between these two groups has to be strong. So just remember, listen to this carefully. One is you need to attain high separation. And second is on the other parameter, the interaction between these two groups has to be strong. And if both these things don't work out, innovation is very difficult to accomplish. So for example, you could have separation, but you could have no interaction on the other side, which means these two are separate. One is thinking of the future, one is executing, but these two are never talking to one another, not interacting, which means that over a period of time, both lose respect for each other. One begins to think that the other is no good. Operations begins to think that these guys are sitting in an ivory tower, the innovation guys think these day-to-day guys are not smart enough for my innovation. So you need to have interaction if your innovation is to be accepted. Otherwise, they remain great ideas on paper and never take off. If you want great ideas to take off, then you need to have that engineer who designed that radar to actually fly with the pilot and see what's working, what's not working. Why is the pilot using the radar? Why is the pilot not using the radar? What are the challenges? As a founder of a taxi aggregation company, you need to sit with the cab driver and figure out whether the cab driver is able to use the map to navigate or not. Whether the sunlight on the screen is actually coming in the way of a driver reading the map. What should you do in such a case? So I think you need that flow interaction. And this is very important. If you get this well, you can innovate as a company. I think a lot of innovative companies have been able to get this right without necessarily understanding this framework. As I read this, I immediately thought, at BigBasket, I think we've understood good pieces of this puzzle. Just to think about this, we have different things which are innovating. Supply chain, we have last mile logistics, we have product. They're all sitting in corporate. They are not running day-to-day businesses, but they are working very tightly, very closely, in close coordination and partnership with the regions who are actually making things work every day. As a result of which there is mutual respect, as a result of which some of the ideas actually take off on the ground and begin to work. I think that is very critical. If you ask me, if Fortune had come up with a book which is compiled by one of the editors of Fortune magazine, the title of the book is, I think, The Greatest Business Decisions Ever Taken. In that, I think in the top 5, the decision is about to bring back Steve Jobs into Apple for the second time. So in the first time around, I think Steve Jobs was a failure because he did not seem to recognize that it's important for these two aspects of the company, these two organizations of the company to work well and respect each other. He came from the design background. He didn't have respect for ops at all. And the lack of respect showed up every day. As a result of which they two never worked well together. I think when he came back again to Apple, he fixed that mistakes. He got the soldiers and the artists to work well together. I think Tim Cook, for example, who's now the current CEO of Apple, was actually a soldier. He didn't come from the design background. He came from an ops background. And the fact that he took over from Steve Jobs himself is an indication that Steve Jobs had changed. So I think it's very important to recognize that what kind of a culture actually engenders innovation. I think it's very important for you to get this right if you're an entrepreneur or if you're running a company. Then you will create the right kind of a culture. And what happens is that if you have that right kind of a culture in a crisis like this, it actually begins to play out even better because both these teams have a greater purpose when there is a crisis. BigBasket, everybody feels that they have become the lifeline to a nation like no government agency ever was in the history of independent India. So I think when the culture for innovation exists, when the culture where these two aspects of innovation are working well together, then a crisis actually brings out the best in both these teams. If this culture wasn't there, then I think a crisis actually harms you. It can actually bring you down because then the differences between these two parts of the organization tends to get accentuated and what was bad will tend to go worse. So broadly, that's the way I would look at it. Let me just quickly summarize. Crises are inevitable. There can be different types of crises, a small crisis, a big crisis, a worldwide crisis, a personal crisis, which is a very small one. And it's important for that individual. It's as big a crisis as a pandemic for that individual, a big crisis, family crisis, for example, tragedy is a big crisis. So, I don't know if you heard of these two authors. I just came across them recently, which is Elizabeth Ross and I think it was David Kessler. They had written a book called Of Grief and Grieving. I think Elizabeth had written a book called Death and Dying. In the second book, which is Of Grief and Grieving, they have come out with a beautiful model, a framework, which, I call it as, I use it as an acronym, which is the word D, which is, denial. The first stage of any crisis is there is denial. You don't completely deny it. You deny that, something like this has happened, a close one has passed away. The fact that something that has happened will shut down your business, will bring down your growth rapidly. There is going to be denial. I think if you get past the denial phase, then you get to what they say is anger. You get upset at multiple people. You get upset at the migrants. You get upset with somebody else. You get upset with the world at large. So she talks of, these 5 phases: denial, anger, then you get to bargaining, you get to depression, and then acceptance. So I think the way to deal with the crisis is to get from denial to acceptance very quickly. Because if you get from denial to acceptance quickly, you will begin to innovate. You will begin to think out of the box. You think answers, solutions, rather than, complain and blame others. If Nestle had got from denial to acceptance very quickly, instead of taking a position of, some kind of a righteous indignation, which appeared to the outside world as a sign of arrogance, they would have worked with the authorities. They would have asked the authorities for samples. They would have said, we'll give you some more samples. Can we see this together? And, can we work with you together on this? That would have been the approach they might have taken. So I think whether it's a personal tragedy or it's a pandemic or your business or your industry is affected, this framework has been extremely helpful. Get from denial to acceptance quickly. That is broadly what I had to say. So let me pause here and I'll be happy to.
Thank you. Thank you, Hari. Thank you so much. So from a lifestyle of wants, overnight, the world moved to a lifestyle focused on needs, and food, of course, being the primary one.
Yeah.
And then this is where the steady supply of food items, came into focus out here. This is where I guess BigBasket really rose to the challenge, right? Leadership as a on its feet brand has really come to the fore. So our compliments, and all said and done, what really matters is that at any level of crisis, a brand is able to deliver and kind of restore confidence, saying that yes, we can overcome this, and so can you. So I think that's really what's remarkable about BigBasket and the current spotlight that it is in, due to its innovative mindset and of course for the leadership. I wanted to take your permission, Hari, that we've got a couple of questions rolling in. So maybe extend the webinar by a few minutes. Could you let me know?
Absolutely, you can extend it as long as you want. Absolutely.
All right,
It's my privilege to talk to 100 people.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll move to the questions here now. And while we do that, would you want to briefly touch upon the BB Accelerate program by any chance?
Yeah, so BB Accelerate, there are 2 parts to this program. The first program is actually to handhold, new suppliers, and that new supplier could be a startup, it could be a bigger, company which is trying to, get into a particular space and struggling to get into the space. So what happens is that if we have a team called the Buying and Merchandising team, and that's the team responsible for working with all suppliers for, signing contracts, for discussing terms of trade, for discussing replenishment plans, for discussing margins. So what happens is that if a young brand which is established itself and struggling gets in front of the buying and merchandising team, they will stand no chance, because the buying and merchandising team is going to talk to them about margins straight away. And if the margins are not attractive, will not actually carry your brand. So they need to be handheld in terms of how can you grow with us? How can we give you visibility? How can we provide you some low-cost marketing tools and tips? So that's how a separate team has been created. And that team is much more responsive, helpful, empathetic, dealing with new struggling brands which are trying to establish themselves. That's one part of Accelerate. The second part of Accelerate, which we have not yet taken to its conclusion, is actually investing in some of these startups, just like an accelerator would. So, for example, an accelerator like Techstars would pick about 10 startups every year, a cohort of 10 companies that they would back. And these 10 companies would have different ideas come from different domains. But can BigBasket itself act as an accelerator and help FMCG startups or retail startups with whom we can have positive synergies, where we can invest in them and also help them grow with us? That's the second part of Accelerate.
Nice. And this was operational even before COVID struck?
Yes, much before.
So we've got a question from Ishan Dubey. He says, in post-COVID time of food consumption and home delivery, what will be the new requirements of packaging industry? Would you be able to throw some light on it?
Wow, it's very difficult. Frankly, if you ask me about the future, for most questions, I will try to hazard something, but for most, I will have to say I really don't know, because things are so uncertain. For example, I'm not even able to figure out how long this lockdown would last. How long this concept of social distancing would last. Would it be, for example, 18 to 24 months? No, one school of thought is that, the whole population, or at least 70% of the population, to attain immunity. And that immunity can be attained either through vaccination or just by getting infected. So can a significant part of the economy actually take off, or can the lockdown be unlocked significantly without this herd immunity happening? I don't know. So, for example, today we are, using only, about 2,500 products. We should sell 20,000, but because of government restrictions and because of the fact that people want the basic essentials, our SKU assortment is about 2,500. And the problems that we are facing in terms of manpower and everything, our suppliers are facing the same, which is that Hindustan Unilever, Procter & Gamble, ITC, which is producing a lot of products, they are having the same problem. They don't have people turning up in their factories. So they are also taking some of those calls, which products to prioritize. And we are figuring out which of those, which customers want. And we are tightly integrated with them, where we are telling HUL, for example, that please, these 10 are moving fast. So get us more of these 10 rather than, getting us some other things which consumers are not buying. So we are working very closely. I don't have a very clear answer to how impact the packaging industry. I really don't have an idea as to how it could potentially impact packaging industry. I think it will boost contactless deliveries. I think in the short term, anyone coming up with more and more sophisticated contactless solutions, I think those kind of startups will do well. We are also using contactless solutions for delivering grocery. So I think in terms of packaging, I really don't have a very clear answer.
Sure. Riaz Khan would like to know that how do you see the crisis of job losses that's going to come once the companies start to look into their profits and loss?
Yes. So I think this is a very interesting question. I think it needs to be confronted sooner than later. Actually, I did a webinar specifically on this, which is how do you make some of those difficult choices, especially startups and even larger companies, but more relevant for startups. How do you make some of these difficult choices? So I think what a crisis like this always does, whether it's a pandemic or a financial crisis of 2008, it results in a few things, which is that economic activity begins to contract. So, for example, as we said, there are 2,500 essential commodities only now. Now, what happens to the companies that are producing the remaining? They have to lay off people. What happens to restaurants, businesses which depended upon a bunch of people congregating under one roof for business, restaurants, malls? They will lay off people, right? They have no choice. And when they lay off people, they will stop consuming stuff, which in turn means there will be a cascading effect. They will not buy things from other companies, which in turn have to lay off people. And you will find that stock markets are collapsing. And you will find that, the FIIs, which is the institutional investors, will sell off stocks in all emerging economies, convert all their assets to dollars, and go back and hold dollars. So all of these things are happening worldwide. So job losses are bound to happen. In fact, you can already see them happening. Many companies have already gone down the path of salary cuts. Many of them have furloughed their employees. Many of them, asked them to go on leave. So many of these things are happening. So economic contraction, the economic consequences of it are definitely going to be huge. Economic consequences of social distancing are going to be huge. And some people are going to be affected much more than the other. And some people will be lucky to survive. Some people will be less affected. As I said, every crisis hurts some people very badly, does not hurt a few people, and provides opportunities for a few others.
Right. Thank you. Currently, BigBasket is operational in how many cities? I mean, is it more like 20 plus?
26.
26. All right. And within these 26 cities, what is the number of stores all across?
So we would have about 150 stores, 150, 175 stores.
I see. And I'm sure, I mean, discussions would have started internally as well in terms of a wait and watch mode, right? How long will this crisis last? But do you really see 2020 marking any change in terms of the number of offline retail stores of BigBasket, maybe just converting into online business?
No, sorry. When I said stores, I said we have 150 stores. All of them are dark stores, which means that no customer walks into those stores. All of those stores are used to deliver orders online for our customers.
I see. All right. So entirely online. There isn't any offline retail mode. Not even a single store as yet.
Not even a single.
All right. Okay. Great. There's a question from Prasad Madhwa. He says, with 100% of the population today working from home, how do you foresee the model of working post the COVID crisis? And due to see a change in the spending patterns of people, would they be more conservative?
Yeah. So I think work from home is going to be accepted. I think there was already a debate on this. One school of thought felt that it's not worth bringing people 2 hours of traffic and assembling them under one roof just to get a lot of work done, which could be performed equally effectively at home. Like, just think about the work that we do in the office, right? We respond to emails. We provide outputs for others in the form of PowerPoints, Excel sheets, documents, and then we also, provide inputs that others may ask for. A lot of this can be done as effectively from home without wasting time in traffic. There are a few things that may not be done as effectively, which is, creating some products needs multiple teams to come together, whiteboard, discuss with a lot of energy, face to face. I think those kind of meetings will be those where you may have to assemble in the office, but a good chunk of work can be performed from home. At BigBasket, for example, more or less going forward, 50% of the workforce will continue to work from home for the foreseeable future. Not just in 2020. We have surrendered good part of our corporate office as well. And we believe that 50% of the workforce will operate from home. There is certainly a lot of openness to this. People are very effective. Tools are getting more sophisticated. I can already see that a new round of innovation for tools that can make people even more effective at home will soon come.
Sure. Thank you. There's a question from, Kailash Mathur. How does BigBasket ensure that the delivery man is not a carrier of the virus? And also, how do you think delivery of groceries can be done in an efficient way at the rural places?
Yeah. So coming to this first question, which is that we follow the protocol laid out by the Ministry of Health and WHO, which is that every delivery boy who goes out is, we do temperature scans, contactless temperature scans, and is not sent out if there is a temperature beyond 99 degrees centigrade, Fahrenheit, or showing any kind of other symptoms, which is a running nose or a cold or a cough. Now these symptoms. So person has to be perfectly healthy to all these visible indicators before a person goes out for delivery. And they have the standard personal protection equipment like gloves and the masks. The gloves are disposable. Every order, a fresh pair of gloves is used. And when people return, there is a sanitization that needs to be done. Our warehouses and stores are sanitized every 2 hours. specific team is there in place only for sanitization. We have a COVID warrior whose only job is to ensure that everybody is following the social distancing norms. We've taken all those precautions to ensure that they are themselves not in.
Okay, thank you. How is BigBasket partnering with farmers? Many farmers are unable to sell the reel due to the current pandemic. Abhishek Gaurav would like to know from you.
Yeah, that's a good question. But the point is that, BigBasket is just, entire online grocery in India is less than 2%. So the kiranas and, unorganized retail is the biggest chunk. So 2% to 2 to 3% is online. 15% is modern retail. Modern retail would mean the large format stores like Big Bazaar. So 15 plus 3 is 18. So 82% of grocery is still the kirana stores. And 2% gives you a sense of, that BigBasket cannot solve this pandemic or the problems associated with this pandemic at a national level. We have been working directly with about 9,000 farmers, but there would be, I think, more than a few hundred million farmers. So there is no way we can solve that problem. I keep receiving messages on my social media, LinkedIn and many of the places, that few hundred tons or 1,000 tons of chilies of this farmer are, going to get damaged or going to perish in the next 3 days. Can you help? And various types, chilies to various products, fruits, banana, a plantation is lying, and the crop is not being harvested because there's no buyer. So frankly, it's not easy for us to solve this problem because we are a very small part of the overall ecosystem. So that's the way I see it.
Sure. What is the future of innovative indoor farming in India? Aniket Tambe would like to know.
This is not a topic I frankly understand well. So,
do you really see people, let's say, converting their terraces, balconies into some sort of,
Yeah, I've heard this. I've talked to some very young entrepreneurs who have spoken about this to me. But even when I spoke to them, I never really understood in terms of what is the scale at which this can be done. They seem to be very optimistic, like any young entrepreneur should be. But I never could get a sense of how effectively this will scale.
True. I guess again it's to do with the larger space required, many acres and hectares required to really be able to impact at a larger level. Sure. How does BigBasket see the recent Facebook investment in Reliance, and what changes do you see?
Sure. It's good. Frankly, I don't want to answer this question as a BigBasket employee. Let me just answer as an independent observer. Sure. I'm a great fan of the Kiranas. I think my vote will always be with them. I want them to do well, whether I work for BigBasket or I don't work for BigBasket. I believe in small is beautiful. I believe that they must be supported. I really believe that there must be a great entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur, who is going to solve the problem of these Kiranas, because the only ability they lack is technology. They need to be enabled. They need to be enabled in terms of figuring out what inventory is moving, what is not moving, how to order it efficiently. My support is for any entrepreneur, that is Reliance Jio, anybody else who can solve the problem of the little guy, little Kirana. My vote will always be for them, and I wish they do well.
Sure, thank you. Is BigBasket planning to expand the delivery chain to the rural parts of the nation?
Not really, Priya. I think ultimately, supplying, being able to deliver costs money. At the end of it, you need to be sustainable. We are noticing that even in some of the tier 2 cities where we are operational, we are not able to run it profitably because the number of order density is not sufficient. Sufficient number of people don't want convenience, because for them going out, meeting people, shopping is an experience. And for them, they don't have traffic problems the kind we have in NCR or Mumbai or Bangalore. And therefore, convenience is not such a big thing for them. They want to go out and shop. So even in tier 2 cities, we are finding that customers come to us for prices, and we are not able to, run it sustainably even in some of the tier 2 cities. So rural India is, I think, ruled out for a very, very long time.
Sure. This one's on HR. What is your take, the approach HR going in terms of L&D, learning and development? Do you see a sea change in the online platforms coming up?
Yes, of course. So I think anything that's you find, I think online entertainment, online learning and education, I think they will get a big boost. People are not going to, ever go to a stadium for a long time to watch a match. We won't have an IPL. So I think online gaming will take off. I think online education also will take off. I can't imagine people sitting in classrooms anymore taking the risk for a very long time. I think what happens is that when they get hooked, I think because you're forced to, they're forced to now, then they begin to appreciate that it is reasonably effective. So online education, learning, e-learning, I think will take off in a very big.
Thanks. There were quite a few online grocery startups that failed. What did BigBasket do different as compared to its competitors that made it successful?
I think you should read my book called Saying No to Jugaad, The Making of BigBasket. We've answered this question very conclusively there. I think it's not very easy to answer this question, but let me make an attempt in a minute, which is that I think every company to be successful, in fact, we covered this in the book called, From Pony to Unicorn. One thing it needs to get right. We've talked of a framework. One of the components of framework for scaling sustainably is making the right strategic choices. I think BigBasket made one or two right strategic choices. And the second component is strategic execution. We got both these things right. There are many other components which we got right, and some components which we got completely wrong. But the point is that we got some of these so right that we scaled. And the strategic choices we made were, we will do an inventory model. Many of the companies that started off went down the path of a marketplace. They said asset light. We will pick it from Big Bazaar and deliver if required. We said no, we will have to carry inventory because this does not work for grocery, a marketplace. So I think we got the strategic choice right. We executed well. And I think there were several other things, but in a minute, if I had to say, these were the simple reasons.
Right. Thank you. By when do you think non-essential products delivery to homes can restart? I guess depends on the government.
The government, very likely, I think after the lockdown, after 3rd March, very likely that it can start.
Sure. So, Hari, you've been having multiple conversations, I guess, pretty much ever since lockdown came into, action, because we've been seeing you so active on, multiple webinars, and I'm sure you've also been having a lot of offline conversations. We're sitting in April right now. People are also expecting that, yes, this might just move into May, June. What is your take on this from a restrictions point of view, from a lockdown point of view?
I'm not an expert on this, but let me say what I think. But please,
based on the conversations you've been having.
I know. Yeah. So what you should take it with a pinch of salt, not with a ton of salt, which is that based on the conversation, I think that the lockdown might lift on 3rd March, but the lockdown lifting will be temporary. I think the government, health authorities will be in a wait and watch kind of a mode. If they find that the release of lockdown is resulting again in a spike, steady increase of cases, lockdown is going to come back again. In a pandemic like this, I think lockdown will keep happening in phases. My own sense is that economic recovery will not start in a substantial way before the start of 2020.
Before the start of 2021?
2021, yeah.
All right, sure. And how has the work from home experience been for you now? It's been almost a month that...
For me personally?
Yeah.
For me personally, it's been very good. Actually, I think I would say that there are two ways to look at it. One is we are in a unique situation, as a result of which I am very effective because I have a lot of work to do. But if it was not the extraordinary situation we are in, I might have got a little bored working from home because I would miss those, talking to people, seeing them at the lunch table, some of these informal lunch conversations, seeing them smile, the smiling faces, laughter, the water cooler conversations. I think I will have been missing a lot of that. So I think this problem goes away and I still have to work from home. I may not enjoy it as much. I will spend 50% of my time in the office, 50% I would actually go to the office just to see people, interact with them in person.
Sure. So create a balance there as well.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Rahil Kathuria would like to know, technology is affecting the jobs of people. For example, startup working on drones to deliver the product. So how is HR different in efficiency from all this technology? so they can have a hope to work with institution in future, even after technology. I think in case you've been able to understand the question, yes, please take a go at it.
No,
If
no,
not,
I have not understood. I have not understood.
you're right. So we'll take it offline.
Okay.
And to the participants out here, we just like to let you know that any question that may be unanswered in the coming few minutes, please reach out to me offline, and we'll have these queries taken care of. A lot of it has already been answered by Hari during the webinar, so I'm not really taking up those questions, but feel free to reach out to me, reach out to him on LinkedIn as well. We are happy to kind of collaborate and do the needful. We'll take up this question on from Paras Gupta. It says, as an individual and student, how to take our innovation to the market. One of the biggest challenges is converting a final prototype into a customer deliverable product. It requires industry professionals to guide its manufacturing process. So you've been mentoring a lot of startups, and you've been, a part of, there's been like a good 2 decades now in the startup world. What would be your thoughts around this?
What was the question exactly?
As an individual or student, how to take our innovation to the market. One of the biggest challenges faced is in converting a final prototype into a customer deliverable product.
Got it.
Which requires industry professionals to guide its manufacturing process.
Correct. So got it. So I think that's the reason why Indian startup ecosystem has evolved in the last decade. You have various types of incubators, you have accelerators. So for example, I've been a mentor at a place like Techstars. So at a place like Techstars, they also have the in-house experts who can help with the product, the UI, who can help with technology. So I think many of these young entrepreneurs are able to get the right kind of guidance, right kind of mentorship by being part of these accelerators and incubators. I'm sure colleges are also having their own incubators and accelerators. Many of the engineering colleges have their e-entrepreneurship cells, incubators. And I think these incubators have people from industry, professionals from different walks of life who can then interact with students and give them ideas on how to take ideas to market.
True. Thank you. How did BigBasket change the customer mindset from having to go to the stores and buying vegetables from a local vendor to trusting an e-commerce platform to buy the same goods for them? What was that one milestone that stimulated or brought this change?
I think ultimately it's about the quality. Why does the customer feel reluctant to buy fruits and vegetables from an online store? One is there is a belief that I need to touch and feel, and only then the product is good. The way I buy bhindi is I touch the tips and I get a sense of whether it is tender or not. The way I look at spinach, I can see with my eyes and make out whether it's fresh or not. So that's the reason why I go and buy offline, and I can't do that online. Now let's say you are a customer because of convenience. You are, let's say, a working professional and can't afford to go out. You take a chance, place an order online, and that you find that the product is reasonably okay. You want to tell 5 people about it. Out of those 5 people, 2 will order. And if they also find that the product is reasonably good, then they will order. So word of mouth goes around and people figure out that the products are reasonably good. Now you need to get the products reasonably good. That's the tricky part, that's the difficult part. So we have an entire fruits and vegetables team whose entire job is to understand how to preserve fruits and vegetables from the farm to the customer's doorstep. How do we deliver it within 24 hours, picking at the farmer's place to delivering it to the customer? How do we build out the cold chains? How do we build the sorting? How do we build the grading? How do we build the automatic quality testing? How do we use technology for screening the quality of apples? So I think it's a combination of technology, process, agricultural technology, understanding, about the fruits and vegetables. That whole capability we have built. And using that capability, deliver quality consistently, and then word of mouth is bound to get around.
Sure, thank you. Paras Gupta would like to know if you're able to throw some light on the BigBasket management model behind collecting the crops and delivering over large areas and states.
Collecting?
Crops and delivering over large areas and states.
So we work with farmers. As I said, we have about 9 to 10,000 farmers that we work with. We have collection centers in different parts of India. Farmers come to us with their produce. We treat them like partners, which is that even in difficult times, we ensure that they make money with us by working with us. So for example, the way the prices of vegetables and fruits perishables are controlled is that there is a market price. So if there is a surplus, and if it costs, let's say, 8 rupees to produce a kg of tomato, and if there's a glut in the market, the price could even drop down to 2 rupees a kg, which means the farmer loses 6 rupees for every kg sold. And that's the reason why farmers get sometimes upset and collectively dump the farm produce. So our approach has been that we will never give you less than 10 and 8 rupees. We will do your cost plus a reasonable profit margin as the minimum base price. So that's the minimum you will get by selling to us. So we've reached some kind of agreements. So we've been working with farmers, but we have not got into farming. We have not got into directly cultivating or gathering crops from different parts of India. We work with farmers. In some very rare situations, we have worked with farmers so that they grow specific, crops for us, especially organic or organically grown, so that they have a guarantee that there is somebody to buy. Excepting for those, otherwise we directly buy from farmers rather than collect or grow.
Sure. Thank you. So here's a compliment from one of the participants. Congratulations to you, sir, for your leadership and BigBasket success. Hats off to BB for excellent coordination between suppliers, warehouses, and delivery boys. How do you motivate the employees in this negative and fearful environment? If BigBasket plans for business contingency plan, HR point of view, what would be its content?
Thank you, first of all. Really appreciate the very kind words. In terms of motivating people, I think ultimately it depends on the culture that you have created. As I mentioned, I think, innovation, for innovating, you need to create that foundational culture where there is respect for what everybody is doing. So I think in some ways, everyone in the company recognizes that we are seen as a lifeline and are therefore trying to do our best. People on the field are also recognizing that there are a bunch of people who are sitting in the offices who are more safe than us, but can be nothing else they can do by coming to the field, and that they need to do what they are doing. So I think there is mutual respect and recognition that there's a bigger purpose in what you're doing. I think that's the biggest motivator, I would say.
Sure. You've written a book on why say no to Jugaad. So they just wanted to, I guess, hear a little bit more about the same.
So the title of the book is called Saying No to Jugaad, the Making of BigBasket. So I have been actively involved with the startup ecosystem for nearly 2 decades. And in the last 10 years, I think I've seen a lot of e-commerce companies, many companies, following a lot of wrong practices. As a result of which, they're not very sustainable. Some of them attain huge valuations, but sometimes I have always felt those valuations are not sustainable. So for example, you saw ShopClues. It was a company that was one of the top unicorns in India. I think it was the second or third unicorn in India after Innovate. But at some point of time, it did not sustain, and it was sold off for less than $70 million. Jabong, the same story. You see a lot of other companies, where the valuations are coming up. And the reason why all of this is happening is that they have taken a lot of shortcuts. And as a result of these shortcuts, they have developed bad habits. And bad habits don't help you build a great business. So at BigBasket, I realized we've done some fundamentally sound things. We've never said, we've never done things for the sake of doing them. We've never done things because they're good to do, fashionable to do. We've done things because they're sustainable. They deliver good customer experience and employees feel good about it and benefit by that. So we've had, I would say, sound value systems and created processes for delivering outstanding customer experience. So I thought it's a story worth telling, and a story which communicates the message that you can do things the right way. In the short term, for example, you may not benefit, but in the long term, it will always stand by you. BigBasket was not one of the first unicorns. It became a unicorn only, I think, in 2018. And my own belief was that it should have been a unicorn much before that, but it did not. So it was a slower journey as compared to many others which attained unicorn status quickly. But my own belief is that our unicorn status will never go away because we are going to grow sustainably. So I thought it's a story worth telling. And that's the reason why we wrote that book.
Sure. Thank you. Last question today. It says, what will be required from young graduates in these days? And where does innovation as a mindset or skill set fit in?
Yeah. So what is required of young graduates, I think, to my mind, I'm a little unconventional. I think nothing has changed. I think what is required is unbridled curiosity. Be very curious. Ask a lot of questions. There was a story about a Nobel laureate whose mother never asked him every day, what did you learn at school? She asked him, what good question did you ask? So I think you need to be very curious. I think I've talked to a lot of students. I still am a very passionate engineer. I'm first an engineer and then an HR person. So when I talk about engineering, I always ask, but why do you think that this happens? And then they feel a little flummoxed because they never thought about it. So my question is, why didn't you think about it? Why do you take something for granted? Why didn't you ask why till you got to the root of something? And that holds true for concepts. It holds true for everything. So I think the topmost curiosity is, topmost trait is curiosity. I think you should nurture curiosity. Be like a child. Ask a lot of questions. Don't think that asking questions is a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. I think that's the most important thing. Other thing is that you really should believe that learning starts in real life. College is just a place where you go to, where you are taught a few things. But the real learning happens in real life once you're out in the world. So continue to learn. A lot of people again fall into the trap of, I finished my education. Actually, education starts once you leave college. I think as long as you understand that, believe that, I think you will always be well prepared. You will be resilient. You will always be learning new things. You will not get outdated very easily. You will experiment. You will do things that you may not have otherwise done. So I think curiosity, being open to lifelong learning, I think these are some of the traits.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hari. With this, we conclude the webinar. Special thanks to our guest speaker, Mr. Hari.T.N, for his time and sharing valuable insights from his 3+ years of work experience. And of course, all the recent turnarounds that have been happening. A round of thanks also to our participants for joining us today. I'd like to invite you all to our next webinar tomorrow. Save the date, 25th April, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Our guest speaker is Ms. Meghna Pote of Siemens, Germany, who will talk about the opportunity landscape, insights for fueling and fostering innovation. Please register soon for this webinar. Limited seats available. For those who tuned in late, this curated series on innovations will feature a variety of industry thought leaders, speakers like Mr. Hari.T.N, who are a part of the MIT ID innovation ecosystem. MIT stands for the 4-decade-old Maharashtra Institute of Technology. ID stands for MIT's 15-year-old Institute of Design. And the one-year innovation program is the latest offering of MIT ID, which aims to create a new breed of comprehensive innovators. Thank you once again, Hari. Thank you so much for your time and patiently answering all the questions, and of course, even for the extension of the timeline. Thank you so much.
Thank you.